Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here. We're going to honor Professor Sean Joe as he takes the appointment as Benjamin E. Youngdahl Professor of Social Development. We are fortunate to have this distinguished member of our faculty to recognize today, and I'm pleased that so many members of this community could be with us to celebrate the appointment of Professor Sean Joe to this important endowed professorship. Professor Joe, we welcome you, of course. We're delighted that you're now a member of our faculty, and he is joined today by family members and friends. I'd like to especially welcome your mother, Esther Reese. I had a chance just to say hello. Thank you for being with us. She's here from New York, and I'm delighted that your two sons, Edric and Jordan, could be here as well. To your family members, let me say that appointment to an endowed professorship at Washington University is the highest recognition that we extend to members of our faculty, and I'm so pleased that you could all be with us this afternoon. Would you please stand and receive our welcome? Dr. Sean Joe has also attracted some very distinguished colleagues. One is the sitting chancellor of the University of Illinois, Chicago, Professor Paula Allen Mears. She has been a member of the National Advisory Council here in the Brown School, but she's been very busy in her career beyond that. And I'd like her to please stand and receive our welcome and recognition. Second, a former president of Stillman, and importantly, Dr. Joe's mentor, Dr. Ernest McNeely, is here from Georgia, and I'm very grateful that he made the trip to be a part of this celebration. Thank you. There are many other friends and colleagues who've traveled some distance to be here today. Dr. Waldo Johnson from the University of Chicago, Dr. Aracelis Francis from the University of the Virgin Islands, and friends Randall Bynum and Stephen Beard. It's great that many could come and join the community, at least for this short time, to celebrate Professor Joe's appointment to the Youngdahl Professorship. Professor Joe has an outstanding career, obviously. He wouldn't be receiving this distinguished professorship if that were not so. And we have been keenly interested in attracting him to Washington University to continue his outstanding work on preventing self-destructive behaviors in African American adolescent males, the role of religion in Black suicidal behavior, father-focused family-based interventions, and racial inequality in adolescent development. He came to us in the fall of 2014, a short while ago, from the great program of the University of Michigan, where he held a joint position as associate professor in the School of Social Work and in the Department of Psychiatry at their School of Medicine. We're extremely fortunate to have drawn Professor Joe to St. Louis and to Washington University's Brown School. We're very grateful to him for making this very important commitment to make the move and to be a part of the Washington University family. We're privileged to have many outstanding faculty members who've gained a great deal of recognition and have well-deserved reputations. These professorships extend a special honor as a sign of our admiration. We honor these outstanding scholars. These are enduring legacies that we think very important. In a few minutes, Dean Lawler is going to introduce Professor Joe, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about the individual for whom this professorship is named. The professorship is one named in honor of Benjamin E. Youngdahl, and on occasions like this, we have the opportunity to remind people of the individual associated with the professorship by name. Benjamin Youngdahl was a social reformer, and he was the first dean of the George Warren Brown School of Social Work. Prior to joining Washington University, he spent his career fighting for social change, first as a public school principal and superintendent in Minnesota, and eventually as director of public welfare for his home state. He later was a professor of sociology at his alma mater, Gustavus Adolphus College in Minnesota. Dean Youngdahl came to the university as an associate professor in 1939. A very important point in terms of our history. This was just 2 years prior to Brown Hall's completion, and the school began awarding the Master of Social Work degree. Youngdahl was hired by his good friend, Frank J. Bruno, another individual for whom a professorship is named, who was then developing the Brown School. At that time, it existed only as a department of social work, not yet as a school. Shortly after Youngdahl's arrival here, Bruno began advocating for Youngdahl as his successor. In 1949, Dean Youngdahl was appointed the first dean of the George Warren Brown School of Social Work. He finally received approval, In his time at the school, Dean Youngdahl doubled the student body. He paid particular attention to making sure the school attracted and enrolled international students, something for which we're very well known today, and he ensured their eligibility for scholarship support. Under his watch, the school established its own community partnerships to develop student practicum sites throughout the greater St. Louis region, as well as within the School of Medicine. The expansion of the student body and the further development of field education opportunities were key elements of the Brown School's first strategic plan. This was overseen by Dean Youngdahl. This effort to prepare strategic plans has been continued by great deans Shanti Kanduka and Eddie Lawler. The third aspect of Dean Youngdahl's plan, the development of a doctoral program in social work, has had great impact on the school, but more important, has had great impact in the world of social work education and scholarship, as graduates of this school with the PhD have gone on to great careers in academia and other positions. One of Dean Youngdahl's most notable accomplishments was his successful push for racial integration of the Brown School and Washington University's main campus. He wrote to Chancellor Arthur Holly Compton and said, quote, "Here in the School of Social Work, we are placed in a particularly vulnerable position insofar as we teach our students to be objective in human relations and to value the human personality as such," end quote. Dean Youngdahl was effective in bringing about the recruitment of African American students for the fall of 1948 and encouraged the further elaboration of our effort on this campus to draw African Americans into all of our programs on the campus. Dean Youngdahl was the president of both the American Association of Social Work from 1951 to 1953 and the National Conference on Social Work from 1955 to 1956. He was awarded a Distinguished Faculty Award at Washington University's Founders Day in 1961. In 1968, Dean Youngdahl received an honorary degree from Washington University. He passed away in 1970, but his legacy endures here at the Brown School and at Washington University. The professorship we celebrate today, an award to Professor Joe, was established in 1996. I'm proud to tell you, on my watch as Chancellor. Dean Youngdahl's legacy has also lived on with his family, including numerous relatives who have received degrees from Washington University. I'd like to mention the late Jim Youngdahl, son of Dean Youngdahl, who attended the university in 1945, Dr. Patricia Youngdahl, daughter-in-law of Dean Youngdahl, who came to the university for both a bachelor's degree in psychology in 1947, a master's degree in 1948. Their daughter Sarah came to the Brown School for her Master of Social Work degree and graduated in 1990. Quite a legacy from Benjamin Youngdahl. Finally, it's my pleasure to recognize and introduce Jay Youngdahl, a grandson of Dean Youngdahl. Though Jay didn't attend Washington University, he's been very active here as a member of the Brown School National Advisory Council since 2006. And while he doesn't live in St. Louis, he's made it a priority to attend meetings and serve in this advisory role. Jay, I want to thank you for making the special trip to be here today. We thank you for allowing us to honor your grandfather, and I'd like to invite you forward to make some remarks about him. Please welcome Jay Youngdahl.
Well, thank you very much, all distinguished guests. It's quite an honor for me to come and represent my family. It's an honor in a number of ways. It's an honor to have a chair named after our grandfather. It's an honor to be able to be allowed to have this kind of family connection. And I want to especially thank Dean Lawler, who's been very helpful and solicitous in keeping me involved and encouraging me to be involved even more. And I appreciate that. It was an honor to be associated with Professor Sheridan in the great work that he did. And now we're thrilled and honored to be associated with Professor Joe and his family. And I want to give many, many thanks for that from myself and from my family. I think there are going to be some words about my grandfather, but I did see that there's a picture of him in the book. And if anybody wonders where I got my big forehead, right? You kind of see that? Right. And I was trying to think of something to kind of help channel him. And apparently back in the day, pinky rings were big. And so I had been given, when he passed away, his pinky ring. So I'm wearing that today. I guess that was the style back in that time. So anyway, we'll see if I can channel him a little bit. I just have a few minutes. My grandfather was an extraordinary man. He was a second-generation Swede, and like a lot of the kind of second generation, it was an overachieving generation. And so there were 10 or 12 of them, and everybody went on to do some kind of extraordinary thing, some in politics, many in religion, and he was one of those. And they were full of life. And still, when they come together as a family, often in northern Minnesota, and every once in a while I get to come, it's songs and joy. And I mean, it's just, there was joy, as they say these days, there was joy in that boy. There was joy in those Youngdahls at that time. And he was both an academic and a practitioner. One of the family stories that we know a little bit about, but we never got the full story, is in World War II, after VE Day, he was made a colonel somehow and was sent behind the American military to coordinate some of the social work, social welfare that needed to be done. But he was kind of a prim and proper fellow, and he just wrote these letters back, which frankly could have been written from anywhere, because you weren't supposed to give secrets or things. So we never quite knew where he was or whatever, but that was certainly part of his early practice. He was very much an academician. He very much believed, as Professor Joe does, in the power of ideas. And that's something that both of those factors are ones that have been part of our lives and certainly part of my life, and I owe much of it to him. And he was not a radical man. He was kind of before his time was a little bit before the 60s. I remember one of the last discussions I had with him is I was advocating the U.S. Get out of Vietnam, and he was still kind of worried about the domino theory. But later he changed his position right before he passed away, which I was happy about as a young 18-year-old kind of firebrand at the time. But he believed very strongly in standing up for what was right, and he certainly taught us that, and we're better for it. You know, there are several things about him that we remember. One is the fight for social justice that the Chancellor talked about. My daughter, for example, would have liked to have been here today, but she's leading the legal effort in Little Rock on what they call the Fight for 15, which is to try to get $15 an hour wages for McDonald's workers and things like that, and is over at the National Labor Relations Board today presenting witnesses. My sister does a similar kind of law and is involved in that. Second is the issue of integration. I grew up in Little Rock, And my father was one of the first lawyers to test out the Civil Rights Law of 1964. My mother was active in school issues in Little Rock in terms of integration. And that was something we kind of learned from him, and then we were put into a certain historical moment. And there are times about those historical moments, like one that he had in 1948 here when he worked for the integration of this school. And so that's been a defining theme of our family. And then when he was the president of one of the social work national organizations, he gave a speech in which he talked about the requirement to care for the lost, the least, and the last. And that has very much been something that has stayed in our family, and we can certainly thank him for that. Because extraordinary lives like his affect people in extraordinary ways. And while a lot of religious traditions think about the afterlife in different ways, one of the ways that appeals to me is to think of the seeds of people that we retain within us. It's kind of like a change to our DNA or a karmic seed, or what do we want to say. And in that way, people live on. Their soul lives on. And certainly my grandfather lives in that way with me, and I think probably in the Brown School as well. And in that same kind of way, talking about the kind of soul, I want to say one thing about the Brown School and why our family feels so strongly about the Brown School. And for us, the Brown School really is the soul of Washington University. I mean, the chancellor has made the school into, one of the top schools in the United States. A relentless campaign that has succeeded, and that's a wonderful thing. It's a fantastic thing. But the Brown School to us is really the soul of the institution. And all schools, I think, need souls. I'm fortunate to be associated with a prestigious university now, and I can tell you from time to time they need a little more soul, because issues come up. And certainly we're in the throes, this school's in the throes of a number of issues now about how to get more poor students in, what to do about adjunct professors, how to deal with the Ferguson issue. And the fact that there's this kind of ethical core, whatever you want to say, here at the school, I think is very important. Because certainly within a school, as powerful and as intelligent as this, there are cross currents going on. My mother grew up in Southeast Missouri. Southeast Missouri has almost been de-jobbed. And because they've been de-jobbed, this school is having to do all kinds of work in terms of social welfare. A lot of that de-jobbing has happened from outsourcing, and a lot of the outsourcing came from ideas or people associated with the business school here. So to some degree, the Brown School has to, again, be the conscience. And that's one of the things that I'm so proud about, and one of the things that keeps me connected, and I think that everybody here at the school should feel very, very good about. In closing, we're so proud about Dr. Joe's work with African American youth, taking on some of the most difficult problems that exist in our society in terms of social development, dealing with some of the folks who have the hardest hands dealt with them. And certainly we couldn't, as a family, feel better about the person in this position. And so again, we feel very grateful, very honored, and very blessed that the Professor Joe has been put in this position. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much. I would say that the leadership and the soul of Dean Youngdahl certainly is in the DNA here, and we're grateful that you're affirming it and that you and your family are engaged with us. We appreciate very much your role on the National Advisory Council, and we look forward to continuing to try to live up to your very high expectations. You noted that I had something to do with the development of the school. That's only partly true. I'm supporting a great group of people. We have wonderful faculty here, and we've had wonderful leadership in the school that I'm just privileged to have the opportunity to work with. Currently, Dean Eddie Lawler is the leader of the Brown School of Social Work and has been very effective. I would like to note as well that he's been a tremendous contributor to the advance of the university as a whole, and among his recent accomplishments was serving as the chair of the advisory committee that led to the appointment of Dean Nancy Stout to lead up our School of Law. Eddie's been tireless in his efforts to strengthen the school, and just coming over to this venue from Brookings Hall, we can see a physical manifestation of his special efforts to expand the school, and we're now fortunate to have Jennifer and Tom Hillman Hall nearly complete. I'm told that we will be doing things in those new facilities come commencement, so just a few months from now. Eddie has been involved in the planning that's leading to an even greater area of impact for the school, and I think the era ahead will be a very exciting one indeed. Of course, as Dean, he played the critical role in recruiting Dr. Joe to join us here, and of course, for that, I am deeply grateful. Please join me in welcoming Dean Eddie Lawler.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you and Provost Thorpe for all of your support for our school, all of your support in recruiting Sean Joe here. I also would like to give my welcome to the family, to Sean's mother, Edric, Jordan. Great to have you here. And we're certainly grateful for all the colleagues and friends and family who've traveled long distances to be here with Sean. I too want to spend just a minute on recognizing Dean Benjamin Youngdahl for his leadership in transforming this school. Jay, your comments were just terrific in connecting kind of the long lines of Dean Youngdahl to your family's values, and kind of the history of this place. But as a current dean of the school, I think of the legacy of Dean Youngdahl as being very important. And I hear from alumni actually all over the world, not just all over the country, about all the personal things that Dean Youngdahl did to support students. Many alumni have told me stories about individual things that Dean Youngdahl did, which we probably couldn't do much of today, to make their education affordable, to find jobs, to make connections. Daniel's heard many of these stories too, where individual students will talk about how Dean Youngdahl gave them a scholarship on the spot in a conversation just to make sure they would thrive and that they would stay in the school. So often I think these decisions were not official policy, and in the the world of bureaucracies and compliance we live in today, it's hard to do, but it's very clear that his standard always was to do the right thing. He did the right thing both institutionally, and he did the right thing for all these individuals. And I think for every dean that's followed Dean Youngdahl, he's very much in our consciousness, and he's very much a dean's role model. And I think it's so great, amongst other things today, that we're sort of celebrating and reflecting again on his great legacy today. Ben Youngdahl understood that the most important ingredient in having a great school is recruiting and retaining the very best faculty. And amongst other things, during his run, he recruited some amazing faculty to this school. William Gordon was recruited during his watch, and he was the first director of the doctoral program. And his name, William Gordon's name, is on my professorship. When we had the opportunity to fill the Youngdahl chair 2 years ago, I asked a senior group of our faculty to identify the very best faculty nationally that would advance our school. And Professor Sean Joe emerged from that process as a top candidate, and we are extremely fortunate to have been able to recruit him. And I must say that the kind of name, history, and purpose of this chair was instrumental in recruiting Sean to our school. Dean Paul Allen Mears is here. Shanti Kanduka couldn't be with us. He's in China. He's in India right now. But we all have the experience of trying to recruit Sean Joe in former lives. So it's very sweet indeed, as you know, Paula, to have him here with us today. So Professor Sean Joe is, I think, the top national expert on adolescent suicide, especially amongst African American adolescents. His work has taught us about the underlying epidemiology of youth suicide, the prevalence of suicide ideation, the relationships of violence and exposure to homicides, to suicide. He's worked on the role of religion, education, and suicide. He's worked on the role and utilization of mental health services in this population. He's worked on biomarkers of suicide, and he's really been instrumental in developing really the science and evidence of interventions and prevention around suicide in this country, particularly as Chancellor mentioned, a line of work on father-focused, father-centered, and family-based interventions. He has a broad body of work in mental health services research. He's looked at issues of measurement in psychiatric disorders, particularly in racially and ethnically diverse populations. He's looked at the determinants and use of psychiatric services. An example would be kind of use of psychiatric emergency room use for African American youth. He's studied suicide and mental health both in our domestic context but also internationally in contexts as diverse and different as South Africa. And all this work has been extremely influential and published in top journals in the field: JAMA, the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, the American Journal of Public Health, and the British Journal of Psychiatry. His research recently is taking on a broader lens. I think you'll hear some of this in his talk today. And he's now looking to understand the structural and community influences on adolescents, I think with the goal of ultimately building community and region-wide approaches to youth development and positive youth development. As the Chancellor mentioned, Professor Sean Joe came to us from the University of Michigan, where he's been for the last 10 years. I want to just spend a minute talking about his leadership career in addition to his scholarly career. He was he had appointments both in the School of Social Work in Michigan and the Department of Psychiatry in the School of Medicine. His academic background began with a bachelor's degree in Africana Studies and a master's of social work from the State University of New York at Stony Brook, and he received his PhD at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And after that, he moved to the University of Pennsylvania, where he had a number of research positions and a number of projects which worked on youth empowerment, youth employment, culminating in an assistant professor position there. In addition to his academic work, he founded the Emerging Scholars Interdisciplinary Network at Penn. And this is a really important national initiative that's been providing early career support for social science and behavioral scientists to create a large interdisciplinary network and support system for research and career development, especially career development for work on issues affecting people of color. So in 2004, Professor Joe brought this network with him to the University of Michigan, where this program absolutely flourished and became a national model, and he worked tirelessly to raise money, mentor, and reach out to this really impressive network now of national scholars. did a number of other leadership roles at the University of Michigan. He was a faculty associate and the associate director for research and training at the Program for Research on Black Americans at the Institute for Social Research. And under that program, this organization developed really great, high-quality national data on African Americans, and this data has been absolutely critical as a basis for academic scholarship, but also importantly for affecting public policy. And this program was also influential in training a whole cadre of young scholars. Professor Joe's received numerous honors for his leadership in the field. In 2008, he was the recipient of the Early Career Achievement Award from the Society of Social Work and Research. In 2009, he was given the Edmund Schneidman Award from the American Association of Suicidology for outstanding contributions in research in suicide studies. He was in the inaugural class, the first fellow for the Society for Social Work and Research, and he's also a member of the New York Academy of Medicine, the Roundtables on Science and Social Work, and I could go on and on. He's providing some really important leadership for the field of social work right now. He's an active board member for the Society for Social Work and Research, and he's recently been leading a national effort to increase the profession's policy influence. So, deans learn a lot about faculty during the recruitment process. Some faculty we learn are mostly interested in maybe the cultural life of the city or what good restaurants there are, things of that sort. But Sean was completely different. He wanted to, from the get-go, to meet our community leaders in organizations. And in fact, there are many community leaders here today who he met and reached out to during this whole recruitment process. This was the most important professional thing for him coming here. While we were going through these conversations, I got to learn firsthand about his values, his passion to provide both university, institutional leadership, but also broader policy leadership in our field, and very importantly, his commitment to our St. Louis community. Sean came here because he wanted to work and wanted to put in efforts here in St. Louis. I would say first and foremost, though, his commitment is to Edric and Jordan. That was the most meaningful conversations, and he had to be sure for you guys that coming to St. Louis would be the very best environment, as he would say, for the boys, that they would have education, great education, music, sports, and overall a great quality of life. And Edric and Jordan, we are so excited to also have you here as part of our community. He also expressed interest in continuing and developing this model of mentorship in the Emerging Scholars Network, mentoring young faculty, especially faculty of color, and advancing mental health services research here, contributing to public policy, and especially putting down roots to build a program of research, service, and community impact, especially focused on youth development here in St. Louis. And I'm sure you're going to hear about this today. And all of this is so exciting for the future of our school and certainly for the future of our community. So it's clear he came here to work deeply in our community. And already, Professor Joe is co-chairing our Committee on Community-Based Partnerships, along with Cynthia Williams. This work is always important, but especially important in the context of the shooting of Michael Brown and its aftermath here in St. Louis. Under Professor Sean Joe's leadership, we envision these school partnerships will provide some new platforms for our teaching in communities, for long-term field education, technical assistance and evaluation support, and active service delivery and active participation in programs out there to develop sustainable community development in St. Louis. So I would say much of who Sean is and what he does mirrors the values, priorities, and even the strategic plan that Dean Youngdahl developed for our school 70 years ago. And I have to believe that Dean Youngdahl would be proud of the leadership and the work that Professor Joe has undertaken in such a short period of time and what this professorship has come to mean. Michael Sherrodden was the former holder of the Youngdahl Chair and was incredibly proud of the Youngdahl legacy, and he took the name and the mission of that professorship quite seriously. Michael's unfortunately in Singapore today, so he couldn't be with us, but he asked me to pass along his congratulations to you, Sean, and his appreciation, Jay, to the Youngdahl family, and he identifies very much with this professorship. The title of our school's history is taken from a talk that Dean Youngdahl gave, which was called What We Believe. And in this speech, Dean Youngdahl says, our philosophy and our approach in social work is essentially an optimistic one. We think that it is worth doing something about given situations. We believe that progress can be made by intelligent application of knowledge. We are a dynamic profession, and we refuse to accept the cynicism and pessimism of some of our contemporaries. With Jay here today, I think it's like the circle of life. Reflecting back on both the really important values and history and contributions of Ben Youngdahl, but also looking ahead to the great contributions that Sean Joe will make under the name of this chaired professorship. Celebration of Sean Joe joining us at the Brown School and his association now with the Youngdahl family makes this a very special day. Sean, we're thrilled by your appointment to the Benjamin E. Youngdahl Professor of Social Development, and we congratulate you.
We have just one more formality before we hear from Professor Joe. We present a medallion as a symbol of your appointment. It has the seal of the university, and it's engraved Benjamin E. Youngdahl Professor of Social Development, and on the reverse, Sean Joe, January 26, 2015.
I'll hold it for now. You know, in life, you always have to take a second to take a moment in, and I'm just taking it in for a second. So please forgive me. Chancellor Wrighton, thank you for bestowing this wonderful honor. I want to thank Jay Youngdahl and the entire Youngdahl family for your continued generosity and support of the Brown School. Dean Lawler, I sincerely appreciate and I'm humbled by this opportunity to serve and to be here. My Brown School colleagues, thank you for selecting me to join this outstanding group of faculty. Michael Sherrodden, thank you for your stellar stewardship as the first Youngdahl Professor of Social Development. And for each of you here today with me, I want to thank you for taking the time. The Moores, the Peters, the Foxes, different members of the audience, I want to just thank you for being here. And for others who have welcomed me to St. Louis, Dana Randolph and others, I want to thank you for your generosity. Extremely welcoming. The real honor. As much as I might relish in this moment and other moments to come, probably for my own mental health reasons, to enjoy it, my personal efforts that help to occasion this, I might think about that for a second. But let me say I'm clear. This honor bestowed on less than 1% of faculty at universities across the nation, it honors not me. It honors a legacy of sacrifice, support, a legacy of patience and faith of many, some known directly to me and others unknown. Some who are present today and others who are not. Like my mother, Esther Reese, who could make a way when there wasn't a way, across continents, to bring me here. My friends, Stephen and Shannon and Randy Bynum and Michelle and others who supported me with the idea that I might have something to offer. To mentors, present and not present, like Emil and Murda Adams, who allowed a very energetic young man to always come and vent in their office and to talk about, how do we make it better? To colleagues, friends, and mentors, peer mentors like Waldo Johnson, again, who's been so giving of their wisdom and insight. These people built the steps my feet climbed and traveled. They fostered opportunities that helped shape once a boy, then a young man, and now to the man that stands at this podium. I had to look up, what does it mean to be honored? In the Webster Dictionary on my iPhone. And it had 7 definitions for the word honor, such as integrity in one's belief and actions. I said, okay, I can live with that. But the one I like the most is this: the privilege of being associated with or receiving favor from a respected person's group and organizations. And the reason I like that, because that suggested to me that the real worth of any honor lies not in the individual who receives it, but in the relationship that he has with other people. So for that, thank you, because my honor lies with these people, my families, my friends, and my mentors, and my colleagues. So that's my career as more of a reflection of these many people I've learned from. Those who took a chance on a boy from an immigrant family living in the rich, extremely rich tapestry of Brooklyn, New York. Notice the theme. In addition to these people previously mentioned, let me highlight a few who also fashioned some of my pivotal opportunities. The former president of Stillman College, Dr. Ernest McNeely, an outstanding father to his son, an astute leader, administrator, hardworking man of achievement. You've always been an example of quiet yet strong leadership, an outstanding artist and academic leader. I remember fondly one late fall day when you took the time to explain to this young man, just a fledgling MSW student, the facts about regression analysis. I didn't understand it at all, but here's what I understood. That this man, after a long day of dealing with the challenges of university leadership, a son, young son, and a wife at home waiting for him, took the time to listen, to encourage, and to even teach. An emerging scholar who had aspirations for a doctoral degree. Another example would be Dr. Araceli Francis, whose unwavering commitment and excellent stewardship of a fellowship program unleashed a cohort of rigorously trained social work researchers spanning 2 generations that delivered someone like Jerome Shealy, then a recent graduate of the PhD program in Howard, who finished his PhD in 3 years post-MSW. He took extra statistics courses, and what that served for me was a compass for this first-generation college student of what to aspire for. Thank you, Dr. Francis, and for traveling from St. Thomas to be here today. Another example, and I could go on, but I want to mention one more, and that is Chancellor Paula Allen Mayers, whose career always served as inspiration and as a beacon. Again, an outstanding administrator, tireless scholar. Still don't know how she does it. She's more prolific at this age than I would ever be, meaning in terms of her scholarship. She's a mentor. I've tried to follow her footsteps. Her success and steadfast rises were too steep for me to climb. So in my best days in the academy, I can only approximate what you have done in your career. She remains humble, and she was really kind. Let me tell you something. Here I'm meeting the dean of the University of Michigan School of Social Work, and I said, in mine, Sean Joe way, "Hi, I'm Sean Joe. I'm a student at Champaign. You're the second. I will be the fourth. I'll be the second black male." So she was the first black to graduate with a PhD from the University of Illinois School of Social Work. And I said, in the future, I would like to have your job. So she was kind, and then 9 years later, she hired me at the University of Michigan. But I'm just telling you, these are the people who fashioned opportunities for me. So thus, I am focused on anchoring an equal opportunity agenda for adolescent development while I'm here at Washington University. I traveled and I walk with the idea that excellent scholarship is a prerequisite for meaningful social change. I couldn't think of a deeper honor to be here as the Youngdahl professor, because I thought that's when I read the work of your grandfather, this is what I thought about. And this has always been my guiding motto. I began early to build a national program of ethnological research on self-destructive behaviors. I'm going to move through this very quickly because others have done a wonderful job in summarizing anything I've done in this world, so I'm going to move through this quickly. Okay? Clearly, my work has focused for a long time on suicide in America. Looking at what the Surgeon General has focused, we lose 30,000 or more people to suicide every year. Okay? My work began with asking, are there racial differences? Clearly, there were racial differences, and my work began to document this. In many ways, I'm always moved by the idea that I was focused on a population for whom many people said, why are you studying this? The numbers are too low. And my point, in many ways, was that Black Lives Matter. So I will study this. And it has led me here, so I appreciate that. You know? The work has highlighted that despite all the experiences of Black Americans in the United States, despite the higher levels of cardiovascular risk disease and other health disadvantage, suicide was one of the few health outcomes for which Black Americans have an advantage, because whites account for most of the suicides in each year. So I spent a lot of time focused on this. But we were really trying to understand, primarily because we noticed there were historical changes in racial disparities in suicide among the young. And my work began to document that, and it was selected as for the Surgeon General's first National Suicide Prevention Strategy Conference. And we were concerned about this here, this shrinking, narrowing gap in the early years of my career. And we were trying to figure out, what is it about the experience of young Blacks that's different from older Blacks that has led them to consider suicide as an option? And at that point in time, very few was even thinking about this. The work moved forward to make some things clear, that when we think about suicide, it's a male phenomenon, because black males account for most of the suicides among the population, regardless of age group. The work then led throughout the years to document more rigorously not only the suicide deaths, but also non-fatal suicidal behavior, with the wonderful data at the National Survey of American Life at the University of Michigan. And we were able to publish some very influential pieces at the time, gaining significant public attention to the issue of suicide among black Americans. Okay? All this pre-tenure work was honored in many ways, has been documented here, leading me to be among the first to receive different National Institute of Health awards for social work faculty and junior faculty. But I always remember that there was someone before me. So even when I was honored with the Schneider Award, I found it was Alton Kirk who set the pace. And then we grew the work with 5 or 4 colleagues working in groups to bring attention to this work. And it's gone, again, from few empirical work in the early years until I got involved in others in 1994 and forward to now, and it continues to grow. And these awards were given. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because, again, others have mentioned that. The work progressed post-tenure to focusing on religion and suicidal behaviors among black Americans, to being involved and recognized as one of the social work faculty from across the nation who have shown any ability and desire to think critically about how do we advance social work science education. And I appreciated that honor and opportunity to serve. Okay. But that has led to current projects, which I hope to continue while I'm here, to focus on salivary biomarker risk for suicidal behavior, to continue to examine factors associated, particularly cultural factors associated with the mental health services among black American adolescents, and to begin to examine race and the interpersonal theory of suicidal behavior. This work I hope to continue and make opportunities for students here to get involved and for a new generation of suicidologists to emerge focusing on suicidal behavior among black Americans. You know? Themes of my work also reflected the spirit of Frederick Douglass, who often represented the great idea that without struggle there's no freedom. But even Douglass at times attempted to take his own life. So that's led me to focus on the idea that I'm hoping to have a conversation while I'm here as a scholar to say, how do we reconceptualize masculinity? To go from notions of masculinity of tough talk, cool poses, stigma and shame, to one that expresses vulnerability, to know there's multiple masculinities. And I'm hoping to look at this to say, how does it impact men's mental health? Again, the work reminds me, Black Lives Matter. When I think about this experience and where I'm at this point in my life, I remember my brother Trevor, who was then about 18, homicide, killed in Brooklyn. But Trevor's death allowed me to draw energy and purpose. To deepen my commitment to black youth has led me to a career in social work and to continue to try to advance research so we can understand how to make a difference in the lives of black youth. But I moved here on August 10th, the day after Michael Brown was killed. And then it reminded me again that it confirmed the importance of my mission, to continue to advance research, to be a part of a university helping to convene and support a collective impact strategy to remove structural barriers to opportunity. I'm just glad to be here. I think it's a good time, I think it's an important time, and I think I've found a university home that's committed to that idea. However, I don't get too crazy because things are real, you know? And it's a difficult proposition that there's so much trauma coming out from this experience, death of Michael Brown, that I know will condition not only what I do, but how we do it. So I'm hoping to work at this point on a race and opportunity agenda. I believe that universities are the greatest engines for opportunity in American history, and by far the best environments for bringing together the people and original ideas needed to solve the world's greatest problem. When I saw Provost Holden Thorpe describe that word. I just took it. I was like, this is it. This is the agenda. And what a wonderful place it is to be an institution that's going to be committed to that idea. So I've reflected and said, what happens to Americans when the American dream is deferred? What we tend to see many of our young people struggling with is the quest for opportunities. And when their dreams are deferred, then we're dealing with the social consequences which many of us are concerned with today. We must do more to narrow the opportunity divide. And I'm hoping my scholarship will help to lead in that direction, and my service to help to lead in that direction. I started to develop some pilot projects around this issue. How do we look at structural barriers to opportunity? How do we look at structural barriers to college prep? How do we look at structural barriers to supporting healthy young black male development in the city? These are some things we're beginning to do. I cannot get into them in depth here today, but it leads to a very important idea. I'm hoping to be engaged in some intellectual innovations with my colleagues here. I've been so impressed by the speakers, the discussions, that I want to offer something that's going to be the cornerstone of what I'm going to try to do here. How as we, as Americans, permit such high levels of poverty, infant mortality, market income disparity, disparities in health, housing access, and poor life outcomes for so many of our fellow citizens? I'm hoping to engage in a dialogue that pretends this. Our nation operates with a culture of inequality. From its birth, it's designed to produce inequality. As much as we have to produce freedom and other innovations, it's stuck with a culture of inequality. Because rooted in it is this idea that we accept as part of our values, that for some reason we really believe, some of us, that there's some inherent human differences, okay, positioned by social class and skin, that makes people less able than other people. This poisonous, corrosive thing has resulted in issues like racism, discrimination, when we really believe, culturally, both from conservative to liberals, that there are inherent individual differences, okay, that no matter what we do, some people cannot move beyond their social position. I beg you, I can't explain the level of deviousness and disparities that we see any further than trying to understand that it must be something cultural about how we operate. And it's about a culture of inequality that we're accepting, disguised in ideas of meritocracy that we must address. And I think if we do that, then we can move to very big ideas like an opportunity society. I don't want to be engaged, as Diane Allen has said, in a society that looks at equal opportunity to dominate. We have to rethink our model that allows for us to have this wonderful society that we have, but do it in a way that can spread opportunity to others. I think it eats away at our soul. So how prompt are we to satisfy the hunger and thirst of our bodies? How slow to satisfy the hunger and thirst of our souls? I beg you, as we do this work, we must do something to address this issue about the culture of inequality. There's an opportunity to further diversify the scientific workforce. I will continue to do the work around ESIN and to work with my colleagues here, hopefully to advance at least a national leadership conference on the role of science, to bring scholars here to begin to think about the ideas of how do we begin to coalesce, integrate what we do know, to begin to engage in some discussions about real solutions to address racial disparities and raising healthy young people in the region. My point to you today is that opportunity matters, and that's going to be what I'll be focused on because it gave me a lot. The Educational Opportunity Program allowed me to go to Stony Brook. The Minority Fellowship Program allowed me to get a graduate education with support and allowed me to be sane at the same time. Others gave me an opportunity like Vicki Levin to begin to do federal and national reviews and how much I've learned from that opportunity. I in turn try to create opportunities for future generations of scholars. My colleagues and family, I'm just saying I am hopeful. The most authentic thing about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, to love, and to be greater than our suffering. I look forward to the opportunity to serve as the Benjamin Youngdahl Professor of Social Development, to advance some of these ideas, and I hope to work with many of you in the room to do that. Thank you very much, and I hope everybody's honored.
Thanks very much, Professor Joe. Appointment to a named professorship at Washington University is made on the basis of achievement and potential. And in Professor Joe, we see enormous achievement and enormous potential. And I certainly look forward to working with you and others in this school to realize the aspirations that you've set out here. We thank you for the commitment you've made to be a part of the St. Louis community and Washington University, and we look forward to your continued great success. To members of your family, thank you once again for joining us, and I'd like you all to join us for a refreshment reception downstairs. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. Thank you.